So with a lot of these kind of extreme Superman positions, extra pressure on the shoulders, like your upper body, your kind of lats, your abdominals, and your pressure on your hips, because the longer you are, the more closed off your hips are going to be at peak flexion at the top of the pedal stroke. I'm wondering if that has contributed to a lot of the implosions, projectile vomiting, DNFs, all the stuff we saw on Saturday.
Welcome to Cycling Demystified, brought to you by Foundation Bike Fit and Frequency Cycle Works, the podcast where we help you take your cycling to the next level by sharing the knowledge from experienced bike fitters, mechanics, and the hidden players within the bike industry.
All right, welcome back to the podcast team. We are going to be doing an episode all about triathlon and lessons learned from the recent World Championships in Hawaii, the Men's World Championships. Women's was in Nice this year, men's was in Kona this year. And as bike fitters, we're going to be discussing it from the perspective of bike fit and the consequences of your bike fit on your overall triathlon experience, results. Well, would it be fair, Matt, to say that triathlon these days is pretty much a bike race?
Well, it was on Saturday.
Yeah.
And the person who raced the triathlon ultimately won.
Yeah. So, we're here with Matt. No Ev today. It's just going to be a bit of bike fit geekery and a bit of triathlon bashing, I think.
I think he heard the word triathlon and
he
ducked
disappeared,
out.
didn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got some important lessons we want to convey on the results of the race, because there were some pretty spectacular explosions, I would say.
I have so much to say about this.
Yeah.
Like,
all right.
So much. There was a lot of how not to race a triathlon going on Saturday, and a lot of, like you say, lessons to be learned for people who are thinking about their bike position, their equipment, looking at their triathlon goals for next year. And there are some warnings that we must heed.
Indeed.
From Saturday's events.
Because the pro racing tends to be a showcase for the sport, and what we see the pros doing often becomes a benchmark or an aspiration for people to kind of train towards, and pro positions aren't always as effective for age groupers as we would like, and maybe they're not that effective for the pros themselves. I think that was the main takeaway from this year's, and also how tribal like kind of triathlon can be. Certainly this year seemed to be this sudden trend towards a certain direction, and I was kind of shocked at how many bike positions seem to all go in this direction. I don't know whether that was all just knee-jerk or everyone just felt like they had to keep up with the Joneses.
Well, you say the Joneses, the Norwegians.
The Norwegians,
I have a theory about this.
Yeah, go on then.
So just set some context, right? So if you didn't watch the race, because it's the most boring thing to watch on TV ever, it's 8 hours long. So massive group out the water. So usually there's a couple of people that get away at the front of the swim, and that didn't happen this year. There was a group of about 20 odd coming out of the water. So no one got away on the swim, which obviously means a big bike pack. And the way the Hawaii Ironman is, like, I've never been, but I've watched it enough, is that it basically, you go kind of snake around town a little bit. You go up the hill at Palani and then out onto the Queen K where it all settles itself. And it was basically like a crit race, those first few minutes of the bike. Like, everyone's jostling for position. Everyone wants to kind of find their way in the wheels and get into a position where they can get into their rhythm. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of kind of surging and doing all this stuff on the bike. So that was kind of like a first bit of context in the fact that there was a massive group coming out of the water and going out onto the bike. Sam Laidlow decided he was having none of it, so went off up the road, much to his detriment later on. But yeah, for the vast majority, there was a big group, and it was just a case of right, sit in, do the thing, and we'll see you in 4 hours' time, basically. So, but like you say, the kind of the trend for positions Now, my theory on this is because there was a lot of kind of stuff going on in the run up to the race on the internet, social media, YouTube, all this kind of stuff. Everyone's like a social media influencer, YouTube vlogger these days. And I think, or, you know, something that I kind of noticed was basically everyone follows what the Norwegians do. So the Norwegians, being Kristian Blummenfelt and Gustav Eden, if you don't know, they've won pretty much everything there is to win in triathlon. And there was a lot of stuff coming out about their bike positions in the lead between the Olympics in Paris in August and going into the Ironman in Hawaii on Saturday. And it seemed to be trending that they were adopting more of what can only really be described of as a Superman. So Graham Mowbray doing 4,000 metre individual pursuit after his first position got banned, which was like the super kind of tuck position. He decided to go the opposite way and go into this very extreme Superman kind of esque position, which arms
out
really far out in front of him.
Out,
Imagine Superman flying and you're not far off. And that's probably fine for 4 minutes 15 seconds, 4 minutes 20 seconds on a 4K individual pursuit. Maybe not for a 4-hour bike ride.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the first thing. So yeah, there was a lot of kind of like hoo-ha on the internet about, you know, specifically Gustav, but Kristian as well, with their more extended reach, arm pad reach, than has been, kind of say, traditionally used for triathlon bike positions.
Yeah.
And we can see that kind of trend as well. Robert Callin, he had a very extended Superman-esque position. Lionel, who has been messing about a little bit with you know, the Norwegians. He was coached by Gustav's brother Mikael Eden for a period of time. He has a very extended reach, Superman-esque position, very low front end, and a lot of others as well. So they seem to be kind of like flocking to this very extended arm pad reach, Superman-esque position.
Yeah.
Basically because 2 Norwegian lads had done it.
And that seems to be the way. And do you think it's everyone's trying to not lose out?
Yeah.
Because they see people
People are
doing it.
panicking
Yeah.
and they go, oh, these are the best 2 lads in the sport at the minute. We have to do what they do. And it's this kind of like sheep flock mentality that it's like, well, actually what might be best for one person might not actually work for you. But it's this kind of like, this herd mentality where everyone's like, oh, I'm going to miss out. I need to do this in order to be competitive.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, being at your club and suddenly, you know, the guy who's second fastest in the club gets a new bike and suddenly he becomes the fastest one. And then everybody else goes, oh, well, I need to get the TT bike. I need to do that.
Exactly. It's like school.
It's like
the
school.
popular kid at school gets Nike Air Maxes and then everyone wants them. Yeah. It's the same thing and it's stupid.
Well, I would have thought that professionals would be more professional about their bike positions, their performance, what really matters, because like their performance over at the end of the day is what really matters. And so wouldn't you be more objective about how you go about getting that performance, particularly in triathlon where, you know, they're not new to the sport. They've been doing it for quite a while, and, you know, they have coaches and parameters, and, you know, you have to gauge your effort through 3 disciplines. And to suddenly go last minute into a extreme kind of bike position seems, I don't know, a little bit short-sighted.
It's daft. That's what it is. But you mentioned the word professional, and there was a distinct difference, 2 distinct categories as far as I saw it, in the professionals and essentially the clarts that were messing about. And the professionals race to triathlon, and you can see, like, you know, the people who ran well, Patrick Langer, obviously, his position hasn't changed that much.
Well, he won
over the course of years. He won. Well, he was the only one that went for a run. Let's say that. His position hasn't changed much. It's pretty conservative by today's standards. Magnus Ditlev, you know, once he'd had a bit of a word with himself in Tier 2, like, you know, he had a really good run. His bike position not crazy by modern standards.
Yeah.
This is the heavy caveat.
Yeah.
Camworth,
Yeah.
again, you know, very kind of like well-renowned cyclist. His position isn't mental
Yeah.
by modern standards.
Yeah.
So these are the guys who, and I think like my kind of biggest takeaway from what happened was that there was 2 races going on. There was a triathlon and then there was a bike race.
Yeah.
And the people that raced the triathlon ultimately did better in the overall results.
And it seemed to be the guys who had a little bit more experience or have been around in the sport for a while that seemed to pull it off or
Exactly.
do the triathlon
Exactly.
rather than do the bike race, or maybe felt the pressure to have to find something new or some other way of getting to the end result.
And I sound like I sit here sounding like a grumpy old man, but yeah, I understand that without quote unquote innovation and pushing boundaries, you're never going to know. But ultimately, there's paychecks to be won, and you kind of want to give yourself the best chance at earning a paycheck.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
I'm like, innovation is all fair and good.
Yeah,
but this just seemed to be a knee-jerk reaction.
The pendulum swung a bit too far in one direction.
Yeah.
I would say.
And I would say it's definitely worth like trying it out if you're at that pointy end of the race. You're professional, you're looking for those gains. But it almost felt like they were trying it out for the first time at Kona. I mean, they've probably done some testing.
Yeah,
done it all.
But in the short time between the Olympics and the Ironman, like that's not that long.
No.
Yeah, we're looking at August to mid-October.
I mean, most people are spending their time now to prepare for next year.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of honing their bike positions and honing their abilities to hold and in this case actually digest nutrition on the bike in a particular position. So, do you want to tell the listeners what happened to old Kristian?
Yeah, so our mate Kristian Blummenfelt, basically,
who's won,
So
everything.
he's gone the fastest ever over the iron distance. He's won multiple Ironmans. He's an Olympic champion. He's done everything there is to do in triathlon, and he's had some GI issues before. This is not a new thing, but I'm wondering how much his increase in postural stress as a result of his position has put more pressure on his abdomen, i.e. his gastrointestinal system, and resulted in a bit of a projectile vomit at 45 k's an hour rocking down the highway, which was live on MVC in all of its glory. But this is the thing, it's like you mentioned about sustainability. It's like, how sustainable are these positions? And I think that's kind of where I think we can learn a lot from what happened on Saturday. It's like, well, you push it. There's 2 types of stress on a bike. There's the postural stress it takes to maintain your position for the duration of your event at the desired output. And then there's the stress it takes to actually apply that force through the pedals. And if you tip the pendulum too far in one direction, that can take energy away from you, i.e. applying force through the pedals. So with a lot of these kind of extreme Superman positions, extra pressure on the shoulders, like your upper body, your kind of lats, your abdominals, and your pressure on your hips, because the longer you are, the more closed off your hips are going to be at peak flexion at the top of the pedal stroke. I'm wondering if that has contributed to a lot of the implosions, projectile vomiting, DNFs, all the stuff we saw on Saturday.
Because a lot of was it 22% of the men's
12
field?
pro men, 22% of the field, DNF'd.
DNF'd. And you were having a look at the guys who actually were able to run well off the bike, which is the key. And, there's only like 3 of them really who could run well off a good bike.
I think there was only 3 people that ran under 250. And there was a big chunk that ran over to the 312. That was a big chunk. I think there was over 10. And then the rest were kind of like either the wrong end of that or between 250 and 3 hours, which is Kona, mental, right? Because Mark Allen ran 240 over 30 years ago. like on, after riding a metal bike
Yeah.
and running in like Nike Cortezes,
Yeah. And drinking water.
Yeah, probably having a Mars bar along the way. So just to think of like how far certain elements of the sport have come and how far behind relatively other elements are as well. So, and I think that's kind of like one of the points that I think, really hit home for me is that it is a triathlon. It's not a bike race. And, people looking at kind of, pro bike positions, especially of what we saw with the pro men on Saturday, I would strongly urge you to just look at that and go, oh, okay, that's how not to do it. Because,
Yeah, and just to describe to people what we're seeing is, I think there's a couple of different elements in the bike positions that we're seeing. And one of them is like the Superman position. So forearms set very far forward out in front of the bike, shoulders stretched out, torso stretched out really far.
Very narrow.
And very narrow as well. And so everything that your human body generally doesn't
want to do.
Yeah. Closing off shoulders, being horizontal. Your body is designed really to perform best when it's vertical, upright, open-shouldered. Think about running. That's basically what running is. So you're going from one kind of extreme opposite end posture to another in a short period of time, and having to hold that for hours on end. That's pretty stressful in your body. But also, I think saddle positions are also just so far forward these days, and that just adds even more stress to the front end of the bike, both in terms of holding the posture, but also steering. A Kona is windy.
It's
hot.
windy.
Yeah, and it's a difficult bike race to navigate. Even though it's just a straight road, the winds just make it, really difficult to control the bike. So if you've got a bike which is aero, but really doesn't handle very well, then you're going to have a bad day out. And I think that you have to balance all of these things into mind, and you have to balance all of these things when considering your bike position. And there's so much more emphasis on aerodynamics over and above everything else. And I think this is a good lesson in, it affects your performance overall, your running, but also your GI issues, your ability to just digest and get energy into your system. And it's not the first time we've seen this, but it
won't be the last.
Yeah, but it was particularly poignant, I think, at this year's race.
And I think your point about saddle positions as well is quite interesting, because I don't know, the main obstacles in my mind to riding a bike well are, certainly at an age group level, but at a pro level as well, are stability and sustainability before aerodynamics. Because if you cannot sustain the position at the desired output and create that stability through your body, then aero doesn't really matter, because you're not going to be going fast enough to warrant it being a thing. Yeah. So I think, these massively forward kind of positions, the amount of shifting back and shuffling that you see on saddles, and part of that is to do with the gearing as well. Like, people are running such big gears that they're just sliding forward and then having to shift back because they're pushing such big gears around, because you kind of have to, because it's so windy and the speeds are so high. But there's a lot of very angled down saddles, which is usually a red flag for me in terms of reducing the amount of stability that you can create through your hips and your feet. And that force doesn't disappear. It's got to go somewhere. And the only other place you contact a bike, or a tri-bike at least, is through your elbows and forearms. And as a consequence, your shoulders and your lats take the brunt of that force. And if you're, like you were saying, Way, in that extreme internally rotated, narrow, long position, that is a lot of stress to deal with if the vast majority of that stability is being generated in that one area.
And we talk about stress because essentially that's what your body is having to deal with when it's exercising. It's having to deal with a stress or challenge upon the body, and its ability to distribute the energy needed to complete the task that you want it to do. So to run, to breathe, to ride, to push, to swim, whatever. That has to come from, you know, what position you put your body into. Like, do you have enough energy to do what you need to do? And, you know, if you're creating more stress on your body than you need to, and that will just take away energy from what you actually want it to do. So to run, I mean, Patrick made up 9 minutes.
He was about 9 minutes down.
Yeah.
It's like, it was quite funny. It's like, as soon as he hit the ground in T2, got a message from Colin. He's like, game over. It's like, it's like, you know, guys coming out of T2 running like 5:30 a mile. Yeah. The next fastest bloke on the road's running over 6 minutes, 6:10s. Yeah. You know, you don't have to be a mathematical genius to know that, you know, 30 seconds a mile over 26 miles.
Yeah, and you know he knew that as well, didn't he?
Of course he did.
He calculated it all. And Laidlow was there at the front, like wobbling around. He almost passed out, didn't
Mate, can't run a bath.
Yeah.
But this is the problem. Like, he'd done a great bike ride, wicked, 3:57, and then you can't peel the skin off a rice pudding. There's no point, is there?
And even second place, Ditlev, he was. Well, he had to have a little lie down, didn't he?
To be fair to Ditlev, though, like I don't know if you saw like the T100 in Miami earlier in the year, he did a similar thing, where he maybe overexerted himself on the bike a little bit, and then gave himself a bit of a talking to, shoved a load of ice down his suit, and off he went. And he basically snatched victory from the jaws of defeat.
Yeah. But I think this is also an interesting point where people, I think, pigeonhole themselves into, or they label themselves as a certain type of athlete. I'm a strong biker, so I will, you know, push myself really hard on the bike. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, especially if you're doing something like triathlon, where, you know, it's the overall result that really matters. So you know that your superpowers may be on the bike, but, you know, where you can make up the most gains, or where the big wins are in the areas that you haven't mastered as much. So why not, you know, concentrate on that?
But this is a human trait of loss aversion.
Yeah.
You know, and this isn't just related to sport, but people are so
Loss
angsty and kind of get so kind of worked up about the losses. Oh, I'm going to lose time if I don't push the bike. Well, actually, you know, if you ride, you know, say 10 minutes slower over the course of an Ironman, that might result in a run that's an hour quicker.
Yeah.
So, you know, net, you're up 50 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, you're a genius to do that maths. But, and this is the thing where it's like the human nature and the kind of the psychological element maybe play a part as well. It's that fear of loss. Like, oh, I need to make the most of what I'm good at in order to, you know, maximize and stockpile for, you know, when I'm maybe out on the run where I'm maybe not quite so competent. So it's, like I say, it is a triathlon. And I think, like we said before, you know, the people that raced a triathlon at the weekend did overall did better. Yeah. Because they didn't blow all their beans on one element.
So what are our takeaways for our age groupers out there who are watching this race and thinking about their next performance? And,
so big one, pros don't know best.
Yeah.
Do not copy the pros. Because as was evident...
Not exactly, anyway.
Yeah, as was evident, doesn't work.
Inspiration, not emulation.
Exactly. But I think, like, working out what is best for you and kind of, like, you know, looking at, like, the hierarchy of priorities. So most of us don't do this full time. Yeah. You know, we have other things that can influence what happens on your bike, in the pool, and on, you know, on the run as well. So, you know, if you're sitting down for 50, 60 hours a week at your desk in an internally rotated position, then you probably don't want to go too extreme on compounding that internally rotated, hunched, compressed shoulder posture, putting pressure on your abdomen. So first thing is making sure that your body functions well, both in the context of the bike and in life. You know, can you open your shoulders? Can you extend your spine?
Yeah.
Have you got adequate hip extension as well as flexion, internal, external rotation, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And then in terms of your bike position, personally, finding a position that makes it laughably easy.
Yeah.
Because if you get to, if you're doing an Ironman, right, and I've only done one, but it was bloody hard.
Yeah.
If you're getting to 90k halfway through and it's getting hard,
Yeah.
you're done.
Yeah.
You're toast.
Yeah.
You don't want it to get hard until about 160, 170k.
Yeah.
The first, like, you know, basically 3/4 of it have to be laughably easy.
Yeah.
So you need to find a position where you are stable, that is sustainable. You can generate force through the pedals, not only to propel you forward, but also to stabilize your body on the bike. And you also need to find a position where you can ingest and keep down your nutrition, your fuel, your energy.
Yeah.
Because if you can't do those things, aero doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And get this idea out of your head that aerodynamics is your biggest priority. It is not.
I think aerodynamics, as you said earlier, has to be built upon a foundation of stability, strength, ability, functionality, and just getting your nutrition in. You know, Kristian Blummenfelt vomited everywhere, and you know, he couldn't sustain the energy that he required to get to the end. So, you know, aerodynamics for sure is something that can be built towards. And, you know, the Norwegians have also been building towards this new aerodynamic position, but they've just pushed it a little bit too far this time.
Yeah, maybe that day it was a bit too far. Maybe on a different day it works. And, you know, someone posts a ridiculous overall time and they run 2:30 off a really hard bike.
Yeah.
But it wasn't to be on that particular day. So, yeah, maybe it works. Maybe they're onto something. But
not this time.
Not this time. And this is the thing. It's like you get maybe 1-2 shots at this a year.
Yeah.
Like you need to basically make a decision of how much risk you have an appetite for.
Yeah.
Not only with your race strategy, but with your bike positioning as well.
Yeah.
Like how much risk do you want to take? Do you want to put it all on, like, you know, Red 7?
Yeah.
So to speak, like, or do you want to spread that risk over, you know, a sort of broader area and give yourself a better chance at having a good day, rather than risking everything on having a great day and it might go wrong.
So if you've signed up to an Ironman,
or any length of triathlon for that matter,
now is probably,
because they're all bloody hard.
Now is probably the perfect time to be experimenting and trying to figure out. Now being autumn, winter, and going into the off season, where you don't have the pressure of having to perform at a certain level for an upcoming event. You've got the time now to experiment and to train your body into a particular position. So some of that digestion, that nutritional absorption actually needs to be trained, and figuring out what nutrition that you can absorb and what works with your body, as well as working with the bike position.
And then once your bike position is in a good place, you need to train your body and your mind to be able to function well within that environment, which might mean not riding your bike. There's a controversial opinion.
Well, we did write an article about it, so
we did.
We'll leave a link in the description if you want to read that.
Yeah.
But some interesting takeaways from Kona this year. Hopefully that's been useful, and you can take away some actionable actions. Take away some useful tips to put into your own training, and get experimenting and decide and figure out what works for you. And once you figure that out, maybe trust yourself, stick with it, rather than jumping on what you see around you.
Don't be a sheep.
All right, catch you on the next one, guys. See you later. If you made it to the end of this episode, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, do leave us a rating or review, as this really helps other riders find our podcast too, and motivates us to keep making more episodes. Thanks for your support, and catch you on the next one.
Suffering from numb hands, tingling toes, and any other persistent discomforts when you ride? These are all signs that your bike fit could be improved. If you're bike fit curious, get in touch with Wei or Matt by emailing info@foundation.fit or finding them on Instagram @FDN_bikefit. Finally, for all your bike servicing needs, custom dream bike or hand-built wheels, go to www.frequencycycleworks.com or find me on Instagram @frequencycycleworks. Until next time, keep on spinning.